Let's talk a little bit about attention. Attention is really part of executive function. We're going to talk about executive functioning in a lot more detail in a little while. And attention and processing speeds are some of the first things that are affected by any kind of head injury. So when you're doing testing, you'll often see attention being impaired. There are 400 billion bits of information processed in our brain per second. Only about 2,000 of them reach our consciousness. It said also that, now there's another statistic, 70% of our brain is there to inhibit the other 30, not 90-10. And the frontal lobes help us to pay attention. They help us to concentrate, to focus, to make good decisions, to plan, to organize. And they also help us inhibit our... So attention has three control systems: the reticular activating system, the frontal lobe, and the limbic system. The reticular activating system runs throughout our brain in the spiral. It has its little tendrils and everything. It's part of the formation down here, the reticular formation, and it receives signals from all of the different areas of our brain. It's linked to motor functioning, awareness, and sleep. And fibers from the reticular activating formation cause this network in our brain. And now you remember I said that our brains develop kind of like a flower opening up, and the last to develop is the frontal lobe. Well, you can see the reticular activating system goes into the frontal lobe. That'll be important a little bit later when we're talking about ADHD. It's the center for arousal and motivation, some of the things that are a problem when you're talking about ADHD. And extreme damage to any part of the system can lead to coma. The frontal lobes, right here, especially the orbitofrontal cortex, which we were talking about with regard to that test, newest research is showing two distinct networks: a salience network in the dorsal anterior cingulate and the orbitofrontal cortex for executive control. And all of these link together to really help us with good attention and switching topics. The limbic system is the space for emotional awareness, and it's the emotional component of what we actually pay attention to. The limbic system is the base of our emotions with a high vigilant lookout. We've talked in the past about the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, being the major part of the neuroendocrine system that keeps us on track. It allows us to react to stress. It allows us to regulate many of our bodily processes, including digestion and sleep and all of those other good things. So all of these need to be working for us to have good attention. When we don't have good attention, you can hypothesize that one of these areas isn't working. And so that's something to pay attention to when you're doing testing. So attention has many different components. How many of you guys just looked up and were able to pay attention to that? That was your specifically temporal parietal cortex and ventral frontal cortex engaging. It's a filtering process. Any kind of unwarranted sound, you're like, oh. And then you the enhancement allows you your brain to engage and you to pay attention. And then filtering happens. And then disengagement. Ah, that wasn't something I was interested in anyway. And then you can go back to daydream. There's a response selection and control. Intention requires effort to remain attending to something. So when we're talking about attention, we're talking about many different areas of attention. We're also talking about attentional capacity. How much can we actually focus on at any given time? The rule of thumb is 7 plus or minus 2. So we can hold 7 bits of information and attend to 7 bits of information in our memory. And you remember I told you guys that things overlap a lot? Well, memory and attention go hand in hand. Focused attention, sustained attention, selective attention, alternating attention, and divided attention on many different areas that we're going to be learning how to do testing with. Focused attention is the ability to respond discretely to specific visual, auditory, and tactile stimuli. Sustained attention refers to the ability to maintain a consistent behavioral response during continuous repetitive activity. So one of the tests that measures this is TRAILS, or the continuous performance test. Selective attention is a level of attention that refers to capacity to maintain behavioral or cognitive sets. It was the freedom from distractibility from the WISC, or the working memory index that the WAIS looks at. Alternating attention is really being able to have mental flexibility, cognitive flexibility, you've heard those terms before. The ability to shift your focus from thing to thing, and that's found in TRAILS B. And divided attention is the highest level of attention. It refers to our ability to respond simultaneously to multiple tasks, such as manipulating information in our minds with things like TRAILS backwards, or spelling the word world backwards. It's being able to attend to things. You have to hold it in your mind, you have to manipulate it. So that would be more of a divided attention. It's a good illustration of selective attention and how when we're really, really focused, we can filter out everything else, and how for someone with attention deficit, they probably wouldn't even have paid attention to how many basketballs. They were probably looking out the door, see the person walking by, or paying attention to their banana, and they have a lot of trouble staying on task.